Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Miriam Manzo. Today's video is on one of our most requested topics, which is our favorite paint colors. But we're going to dive deeper into choosing paints today, as there are many other elements that are more important than the paint color itself. So let's take a look at paint colors. The first step to choosing a paint color is deciding how the room is going to be used, at what time of day it gets used the most, and most importantly, what is the mood of the room? For example, if it's an office, you're not going to want a soothing or relaxing color necessarily in there. You're going to want something that gives you a little bit more energy. The same goes for a bedroom. In there, you're going to want a soothing color rather than a color that's very energetic. I sometimes see people painting bright yellow or bright green or orange on bedroom walls, and I think that that is not taking into consideration how that room is meant to be used, which is a space for us to calm down and relax. You may have heard from other designers that we do not like to come home to color. We're surrounded all day by color. And when we come home at night, our own houses are generally very neutral so that we're coming into a soothing space. And that's the reason why. Color can make you energetic. It can make you chaotic. It can make you calm. It can make you happy. It can even make you sad. So understanding the mood that you want to create for a room is incredibly important. Once you've established that, then the next item is to select one of the key items in the room. So there's a design theory that many designers live by, which is the 60-30-10 rule. So what does that mean? 60% of the room will be a dominant color. 30% of the room will be a supporting color to that base color. And then 10% is something thrown in there that's a little unexpected, a little bit against the grain. So it makes the room sort of pop and gives that layer of life to the room so that it's not very flat. All colors have an energy that they bring to the room. And that brings us to today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is Skillshare, and there's actually a class on their platform called Mastering Colors and Lighting in Interior Design that I encourage you to go ahead and watch to really learn more about the energies of colors and how they affect the mood of a room. So why do I love Skillshare? Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of members and thousands of online classes available in over 150 countries in multiple languages. It's a place to get inspired, to learn new skills, and then to put those skills into use in impactful ways. What I find most useful about Skillshare's classes is the way that they're broken up. It's done in segments so that you can actually pause it and think about what's been said, or go back and listen to something that's caught your attention or really had meaningful impact for you. Then there is also the component where they're giving you homework to do so that you're putting what you're learning into action. I really believe that this is the best way to learn, is by applying what you're learning to an action. So this can be saved. You can go back, watch your favorites, and easily share your favorites with others in the community. I've told many friends and families about it, and the reason I love it so much is the breadth of classes that they have, not only in my field, which is creative, but I can go and take classes on business, on editing, on video, on cooking, even on relaxing. So many different subjects. There's sure to be one that you'll find that you love. The first 1,000 people to click the link below will get their first month subscription free. So I encourage you to take a look at Skillshare. There's bound to be something in there for everyone. You will love it. Let's get back to energies that colors create. So if we take white, when we think of white, we think again of sterile, pure, cold. Think of a hospital room. Think of a dentist. Think of the white that they wear. It's very sterile, very clean. Now, to add warmth to that, that's where we bring in the warmth of woods or of textures. So rattan, for example, or chunky wool blankets, mohair, that sort of thing, so that we're bringing texture to bring a bit of warmth to that white. Now, if we think of the opposite, which is black, it's overpowering, it's dark, it's heavy. But again, in order to bring warmth, add the luminosity of woods, and we have a beautiful, rich color all of a sudden, rather than something that's very overpowering. Now, let's take green. Green is associated with nature. It's associated with vibrancy, with newness. So an office is a great place for the color green because we think of creating in a green environment. Again, bringing new life forward. Blue is once again calming. We associate it with the sea, with the sky. And then the depth of those blues would give, for example, a lighter blue would be a very different feeling that you would get rather than a dark or a royal blue. So red has long been associated with restaurants because they say that it speeds up your metabolism. It speeds up the way you think, the way you process, the way you eat. Yellow can be a color that is very energetic. Again, sometimes too energetic, depending on the function of that room. So when you start to think of colors as energy, you're going to feel very differently about how you bring those colors to your space. Now, let's talk about paint chips. So there are undertones to color, and this is the hardest thing for people to understand are the undertones. How to find the undertones when you're selecting your colors. So we've got the Benjamin Moore book here, and you can see it is laid out so that there are gradations of color on the chip. Now, all of your neutrals or whites, there are hundreds of shades of white, but every single shade of white has an undertone. There are very few pure whites. Most of the whites are taken from this top chip. So they're put into a separate book, which is just the whites, but most of them can be found in the main color chip book. Now, the way to really understand what the undertone is of that color is to look down to the bottom, because this is a shade of this, which means that it's the same color running throughout. This has more white added to it. Now, the interesting thing about it too is color is affected by the amount of natural light coming into the room. So for example, how many windows a room has will definitely affect the way a color shows up in your space. Now, whether it's an east-facing window, a west-facing window, a north-facing window, also will tell you the quality of the light coming into that room. So for example, if it's south-facing, you're going to get a very warm quality light. If you're north-facing, it's going to be a cooler light coming in. Now, one of the things that I've learned is that depending on your location geographically, you're going to get different quality of lights, even if you're on an east-facing room here in Toronto versus, for example, up in Wasaga, the same east-facing window will be a different quality light. What are some of the things that affect that? What's directly outside the window will affect that. So for example, if you have a lot of green, the light is going to be reflected off of the greens, and that's what's coming through your window. If you've got a red brick wall next to your window, the light is going to reflect off of that red brick. It's going to come into your room, and it's going to affect how the color on your walls look. That's why you may have heard that a color can look one way during the day and another way at night. This is because of the difference between how the natural light looks or reflects off of that paint color, off of that wall, versus how artificial light in the evening reflects off of that wall. General rule of thumb: The lighter the color, the more the reflective quality is going to be. So you're going to get more light bouncing off of that color than you will on the more saturated colors, which will absorb more of that light. So when people ask me for a paint color, it's really difficult for me to make a suggestion to them without seeing the other elements in the room and the light coming in off. This is why off the through the windows. This is why the best way to test colors is to put samples up on the wall. And what I tell my client is you need at least a 2 foot by 2 foot section. I would block out for example, if you have a terracotta wall and you want to switch to a blue or even a white, I would do a bigger white area around and then put the color on. That way, again, you don't get the original terracotta reflecting onto that new color or changing your perception of that color. So you want to have as neutral a background as possible when testing that color. You also want to test that color on different walls in the same room. Again, if one wall has the light bouncing off of it, the other doesn't, you're going to get two different variations of that same color. And then you want to see that color at night before actually committing to it. Now, the finish that you put on the walls or on the trim is also going to affect the way that color looks. So a higher shine paint is going to have a color read darker than its flatter counterpart. A higher shine paint is also going to reflect more light. It is also, for that reason, going to show imperfections far more. So if you have a wall that is not in great shape, the last thing that you want to do is put a high shine paint, because it is going to show every bump and every dimple on that wall. What I like to do to create the biggest appearing room, a room that is sort of envelops you, but at the same time is cozy and yet seems larger, is I like to play with one color on all the surfaces. You will never see a white ceiling in one of my spaces unless the walls are white. I like to take my color up to the ceiling. It actually pushes the ceiling height up rather than creating a contrast and bringing the ceiling down. Then I like to put the same color on the trim, on the baseboard, and on the crown molding. That's if I'm trying to really expand the space and trying to give a really elevated luxury look. Sometimes we go with a different trim color, but that trim color is constantly used on the built-ins, the baseboard, the trim, and the crown molding. What I do though is I play with the sheens. So for example, here behind me in my family room, this is the same color that you see here on the trim. Now, here it's glazed softly, but my undertone is the same, and that's what carries right across onto all of my trim work. Now, the formula I like to use is no matter what the room, doesn't matter if it's a kitchen, doesn't matter if it's a bathroom, I use a high quality washable flat on the walls. Growing up, my father drilled it into me that you have to use semi-gloss on the walls, kid, when you're using a bathroom or a kitchen because you want it to be washable. Well, that is one of the things that no matter how much texture you bring into the room, those walls with shine on them are not going to give you a homey or cozy feeling at all, nor are they going to give you that luxe look we always strive for. So the finishes that I like is a washable flat on the walls. We always use a flat on the ceiling unless we're trying to create drama, and then I'll lacquer the ceiling, which gives you a beautiful reflective quality on your ceiling and actually makes, again, those ceilings appear taller because the reflective quality almost acts like a mirror on the ceiling. And then most of the time, my trim work around the windows, the doors themselves, the door trims, and the base parts are in a semi-gloss. And the reason I do that is it is more washable than a satin finish. The satin will hold scuffs a little bit more. So especially if there are pets or kids, I'll use a semi-gloss on all the trim work. Now, if we're doing wainscoting, then I use a satin on the wainscoting. I don't want a high shine on that wood. Again, it's going to show imperfections. But on my crown molding, I always use a satin. I don't want high shine on the crown moldings. And I usually, again, if I'm doing it all one color, then that color's the same. Just that little bit of shine is what makes that crown molding pop, as opposed to having a white crown molding that takes center stage. So when you're thinking of a color, whether it's white or blue or red, my theory to choosing color is I don't want people to remember what color the room or the house was. I don't want them to think, oh, that was the yellow house or that was the brown house, but rather I like them to remember the feeling that they got being in that room. And so the color is brought in such a subtle way that even though there's color in a room, it doesn't make a huge impact that it becomes a blue room, because that's how a room dates. When you're thinking of color, what you want to do is to find a carpet, a piece of art, or a fabric that you fall in love with to now select the color scheme for the room. True story, we often start with a piece of fabric for our clients, and it's very funny how in the process we rarely wind up using our starting point. The scheme evolves, and then from there we got our color and our mood, but it's not always a piece of fabric that winds up in the final scheme. So let's say you've fallen in love with a piece of art that has a lot of reds. And so you've decided that you actually want a red room, but maybe you don't really want the energy full blown. A great way to design that room then is to take different shades of red and play those against each other so that the whole room winds up having red in it. But because you've got tones and shades, it's not going to be overpowering. It winds up creating a very soothing, relaxing space because there is no contrast. Now, let's talk feature walls. I am not a fan of a feature wall, particularly one that is done with paint color as opposed to a finish. So, when a client asks me for a feature wall made out of, let's say, brick, I'll only agree to it if that brick connects to what is on the exterior of the house, and if there is a good way to finish that brick. So for example, it has to butt into an adjoining wall. I don't like it when it stops and then there's a wall that goes like a hallway to somewhere else and you see all the cut edges of that brick. The same with a wallpaper wall. The only way, or feature wall, the only way I will do wallpaper on one wall is if it's, for example, a very overpowering pattern, in which case I don't want the entire room wrapped in that. But then what I'll do is I will color match the paint for the other walls to the under color of the wallpaper. So the base color of the wallpaper. What that does by bringing that color to the rest of the room, it allows the secondary color or the pattern color to pop. So I'm not a lover of using just a paint color on a feature wall. Again, I think that it is a dated look. I think it does not give that feeling of luxury. And I think that if you want a wall to stand out, it should be with an architectural feature rather than a paint color. Let's get to a few of my favorite paint colors because, as I said, all the prep getting to selecting that color to me is far more important than the color itself. But some of my favorite colors, when we do stagings, we want the color to be as neutral as possible. The biggest element in most homes is the floor, whether that's the wood flooring or a tile. So you should always have those on hand when selecting your color, because again, your flooring is going to have undertones, whether it's a blue undertone or a red or an orange, and you want to make sure to work with that in order to get a luxurious look. If you go with an opposing undertone, it's going to make the undertone in the floor that you don't like perhaps stand out more. One of the colors we use most often is OC22 by Benjamin Moore. It's a very neutral, warm color, reads as white on the walls without being stark and cold. And then some of my favorite colors you'll see in our projects are anywhere from OC23 to OC28, even up to OC31. Those are the colors that we really play with the most for our wall color. As for my favorite white, OC18 for me is the number one white that we use, as well as OC17. They are a yellow-based white. They're not pure, but they are the whites that tend to look best with the type of style of home that we create here at MMI. I hope you found today's video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, to ring that bell icon to be notified of future videos, to like this video and leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing and what some of your favorite paint colors are. I'm Miriam Manzo. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.